morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Froke, and I'm here with my co-host, Nick Sigelski, and we are here in studio with someone who has been on our show multiple times. He is Alex Kremer. He was a director of sales at Outreach and was there super early on in the early days. He then joined Mark Kosklo over at Catalyst, where he was a head of sales, and he helped build their function out 0 to 1. And today he is the CEO over at Alluviance, and he is probably one of the best in the game that I've seen around building culture and developing reps. Nick, why should people listen?
So one of the funny things that we've observed about 30 MPC, Armand, is we really focus guests on the tactics, how to make things practical. When in reality, what really moves a team more than anything else, frankly, is like the culture and the coaching. But the reality is most guests honestly have pretty fluffy stuff around that. And Alex gets really practical and usable around here are ways that you can build culture, change your team, coach people. He talks about things like getting permission to push your top performers. We talked about what happens if you need to change the dynamic between you and somebody on your team. You've been in a pattern for a certain period of time, how to call that out before you change the situation. We talk about on the spectrum of giving no feedback to giving too much feedback, where you should fall for your different reps on your teams. If you are looking for an episode on how to build a rock solid sales culture for your team, this is one to listen to.
Alrighty, Alex, welcome back to the show. We start every show with your top 3 actionable leadership takeaways. Let's get your 3.
All right. Number 1, it's all about how do you know when to challenge your team. If you ever seen the show, The Last Dance, the coach of Michael Jordan said something that will always stick with me. He said, the biggest respect you can give to the best player in the world, you push them hard. So how you do this at the very beginning of your relationship with any rep on your team, especially one who is a top performer, you have to set the tone of, hey, in this relationship, I think I can have the most impact on you and your earnings and your career, as well as the most impact on this team if I push you. Are you open to a relationship in which I push and I challenge you? Once you get their permission to do that, from that point forward, you're going to challenge them, not because they're doing something necessarily bad, but because they got some freaking tall ass ceilings that they can grow into.
Boom. What's number 2?
Number 2, I like to call this dynamic leadership. Now, so often leaders think that they are at the top and the reps and the rest of their team are below them. How do we actually make it so you are shoulder to shoulder with your team? Essentially, you are on the team with them, facing the challenge, trying to slay the dragon with them. So for example, if your executive team is coming down hard on you saying, hey, your prospecting or your pipeline is terrible, how do you not go to your team and say, hey guys, we got this big problem. You need to go about solving this, increase your KPIs. How instead do you approach it and say, hey guys, we have this opportunity in front of us. Some of you probably know how to prospect or build pipeline. I'm going to name this better than me. I would love for all of us to figure out how do we do this together as a crew. Now, the unique part about this is you're actually having to be vulnerable and allowing other people to lead and other people to even lead you. Mm-hmm. This is a unique thing where you are no longer at the top. You are actually shoulder to shoulder with them.
Amazing. Alex, bring it home. What's number 3?
All right. Number 3 is how do you presence at the very beginning of every single team meeting? Now, most reps most likely have been back to back throughout that entire day. And I bet you they got 1 or 2 or maybe 8 meetings after that team meeting as well. People might be in a different state. So at the very beginning, 3 to 5 minutes, you need to have some sort of presencing exercise. That could be box breath. That could be Wim Hof. That could be a meditation. That could be a gratitude practice. That could be everybody stand up out of your chair and stretch. That could be everybody just name, how are you feeling right now? It's a pattern interrupt. And when you actually have a pattern interrupt, it causes people to say, okay, we're here, I'm present. And also, you know what? My team's a little bit different. And it kind of gives you a little chip on your shoulder, like we do things a little bit different. So it's not just the monotony of another team meeting.
I think for a lot of sales leaders, frankly, it's kind of scary to be pushing Michael Jordan for 2 reasons. One, I'm worried that if I push Michael too hard, he's going to be like, I don't want to do this, and he leaves. And I'm dependent on that person to hit my number because they're my top performer. Or 2, they might actually be a little bit better at selling than me. And I'm worried that I'm going to expose myself, or I feel like, is it even my right or place to be pushing them? So, my question for you is for folks that are scared of this or worried about this or haven't pushed top performers before, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see sales leaders making that they should know to be looking out to avoid?
Probably the biggest mistake, and I actually dealt with this a lot when I was at Outreach, was there was a guy on my team who was actually one of my really good friends. His name was Hank Wells. Hank was always fighting for the #1 spot as an account executive at Outreach. And I had actually just moved from being an account executive to a sales manager. And it was just like based on how the teams were unfolding, I ended up being asked to be his leader. And I was terrified because this was a guy who I was asking questions to, who I was getting perspective for on deal advice. And all of a sudden I was being asked to coach him. Where I actually tended to was put my tail between my legs and I focused on everybody else. And I said, Hank, just go and do your thing. As the top rep, he wanted to be pushed. He wanted to become even better. He wanted to become extraordinary. And the reason that I knew that is because I asked him, hey, brother, what do you really care about? Like, you're here, you're the top rep. Like, man, do you just want to make a shit ton of money or what is it that you want? And what he told me is like, dude, I'm trying to be literally the best sales rep that we have at this company and potentially any company I can ever go to. And once I knew that it wasn't my job to necessarily tell him all the things that he was doing wrong or share all this wisdom that I had that he didn't necessarily have. What he was asking of me, whether through his words or whether what I knew was important to him, is for me to point out things or at least bring to his attention things that I was like, hey, is there an opportunity for you to be doing better discovery? I'm not saying I could have done better discovery than you, although you're being asked or you're wanting to become the most extraordinary sales rep we have. I think that your discovery was an 8 there. You think it could be a 10. And it was just simply by me almost like putting the gauntlet down and challenging him. Hey, I think he could be better. Do you think you could? And it was like, especially when you have high achievers like that, like they're going to, answer the call. But the mistake that so many people make as sales leaders is they say, cool, I have about 50% of my team who are low performers. Let's focus on them. Let's try to make them at least achieve 70% of their quota. And then you got, your top 20% of your team who's bringing in classic 80% of your revenue, who you like, they're good. But actually, if you focused on them, on moving from great to extraordinary, the ROI that you're going to have on that is incredible. And I guarantee that when those top performers feel more like, oh man, I'm growing, I'm learning, that's a first domino effect that's going to cause everybody else within the culture to say, oh man, if Hank is in, I'm in. If this guy is open to being challenged, if this guy is growing, I'm open to be doing it as well. It starts a whole wave.
In your experience, what are the top 3 to 4 places that you've found it's most effective to push reps? And what are some of the areas that are better to let lie?
The easiest ways that you can actually push people, I would say, I'd almost break it down into different types of buckets. When it comes to like tactics and strategies, that's always, really, you can get kind of caught in the minutia of things with it.
Yeah.
But I almost break it down to like, how are you going about prospecting and building pipeline? And that could also be, hey, how you actually go about cold calling yourself or how you work with your SDR or just simply like, are you generating pipe? The second part is how are you actually conducting these first meetings and getting them to be a qualified opportunity? The third part I would say is how are you then actually getting these qualified opportunities and moving these all the way to close? And the fourth part, and this is, I think, the secret sauce here is how are you developing these people to be leaders? Meaning, if you have a great rep on your team, the thing that will unlock your team more than anything is how do you change that person's identity from being an individual contributor to being a leader on the team? Because when you can actually develop other leaders, when you have a team meeting and they speak up, I guarantee the other reps are going to listen to them a hell of a lot more than they're going to listen to you because they have credibility. They're in the battlefield right alongside of them, right? They're actually dealing with it. And so if you can instill this feeling of like, hey, I think your voice could be heard more with the newer people, with our executives, with me, and you can actually get them enrolled into the vision of that, you can kind of just sit back and facilitate really powerful conversation. But it's like, how do you make them a great sales professional in those different types of buckets? But really, how do you push them to become a leader on the team? Let's just say you're out. Like
Mhm.
you as the leader can't make a forecast meeting, you can't talk to an executive, whatever it might be. Who's going to be the person that steps in on your behalf? And if you don't have a person that comes to your mind right away, that's a big telltale sign that you're not developing leaders. You need to have that person, or maybe even two people. You say, hey, when I'm out, I can rely on you to step in and be in that leadership type of role.
Sometimes top performers, big egos, when you're running a sales training, they might be the first person, if you bring in an external sales trainer, to be like, I don't need this thing. Best ones don't. Some of them do. Number one thing you can do, make the top performer responsible for helping you roll out the training.
Hmm.
Because now they're like, oh, I got to own this thing. So they're going to really learn it. And they always want to make sure that they look good in front of the team. And it's the double whammy where number one, the top performer is helping you make it real and they're totally invested. And then number two, everyone's looking at the top performer and they're like, if that person's doing it, I have no excuse to not do it. So if I ever wanted to flip a behavior change on my team, I would think, okay, what's the thing I want to teach? Here's my top rep, Morgan Mello. Hey, Morgan, would you go teach this thing for me? And it would work so much better than if I was saying it myself. Going back to the most common mistakes, I think a lot of people, they feel good when they're just constantly patting their top performers on the back. And it goes months and months and months and months. And then when you finally want to give your top performer some hard feedback, when you see things aren't going perfectly, it's like you're ripping off this Band-Aid because they've only heard validation from you for the last 6 months. And now you're like feeling like you're walking on eggshells. You're like, oh God, am I going to ruin their confidence? Are they going to listen to me? They probably don't even respect you that much anymore at this point. So if you find that you're in that point of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you haven't really given them construction feedback and you've got to now break that tension. How do I go about broaching that?
You name it.
Mhm.
It's so easy here. It's like if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're feeling fear, call it out. Hey, Armand, you have been our top rep now for the past 6 months. And I feel like all I've done is I've given you kudos and love. And honestly, brother, you deserve it. And I also feel like I kind of want to call you forward in a few types of areas. But in me doing that, as I said, I actually feel my heart beat a little bit quicker because I'm scared to do that
Mhm.
because I really care about you and I care about our relationship. And I also want to have a relationship too with you where like I can do that. And sometimes I'm like, is Armand okay if I do that? I just want to like name that and let's take this thing that I'm like really afraid to show you and let me put it on the table and let's both look at it. Hopefully that just creates this relationship where like I'm just a freaking dude and I'm trying to figure out how to coach you the best to be the best version of you and make this team great. And I feel scared doing it.
Yeah. You can't just do the hard behavior recorrect where all of a sudden 3, 4, 5, 6 months you haven't been coaching. And then overnight you start coming in with all this critical feedback, negative feedback, whatever it is. They're going to be like, did your boss come down on you? A
Mhm.
smart performer is going to be wondering like what's going on. And what you're doing is you're almost reintroducing that permission-based coaching ask that you talked about at the beginning of the show to force a conversation and change the tenor of the relationship, which I think is really smart.
I mean, what it feels like you're doing is you're breaking the fourth wall and you are calling out the situation before you try to address the situation or change it. And this is where a lot of people screw things up is they just go right to trying to change it and solve it when you can address it first, clear the air and be like, am I seeing this the same way? And then you can move towards changing it. I actually have a question for both of you guys about the frequency of coaching, feedback, constructive criticism, whatever you want to call it, that you give to any individual rep. What I'm hearing from you is waiting 6 months before giving any sort of feedback of, hey, you might want to change this is too infrequent. But I'm worried that like if I give a rep feedback on every single call, it might start to discourage them. So the opposite end of the spectrum might be I give them feedback or break them down a little bit every single time. Where is the right place for me as a leader on that spectrum?
Every human being is different. I used to have this rep on my team. He's actually still one of my very good friends, a guy named Kurt. If I coached him and told him too many things about where he could be improving, I would see literally the color in his face drain. And that would seep into literally every area of his life, not just on prospect calls, but also in his relationship and also in other areas that he was doing. And what I found is for him, he needed for me to be like, you're amazing. You crush. Keep on doing exactly what you're doing. And that instilled within him this power of like, oh man, I know what I'm doing here. And then there were certain times where I was like, hey, like, you're doing great there. Are you open for a little bit of respectful feedback on ways where I think you can improve? And then after he was already built up, he was like, yeah, like, teach me. And then there's other people who are like, I don't know whether you want to call them a masochist or what, but like, punch me in the face repeatedly and tell me where I need to become better.
Yeah.
And those are the people who are just like, show me where I'm doing wrong. I can handle it and let's go. There's really not like a one size fits all. I think the key thing that so many leaders struggle with is attunement to the person. Do you actually know this person personally? When you give them feedback, do they say yes, but emotionally are like, I can't handle this? And are you actually in tune with them? And, you know, honestly, what it takes is like, are you as a leader actually in tune with yourself? Do you know when you're actually giving somebody feedback because you're freaking pissed off? Or are you like, hey, I'm pissed off. I need to make sure that I'm actually coming from the right place and then give the feedback. And I'll give a little example here. There was a samurai and a bad guy killed his master. And the samurai, doing the thing that was right, said, okay, I need to go now kill this guy who killed my master. And he goes and he finds this guy and he corners him in a room. And as he pulls out his sword, the guy spits in his face. What he does is he sheathes his sword and he leaves. And then he comes back the very next day. He finds the guy who killed his master, takes out a sword, and he kills him. And his fellow samurai went up to him, was like, dude, that guy spit in your face. Like, why didn't you kill him the first day? And he was like, well, when he spit in my face, I got angry. I wasn't going to kill him because I was angry. I was going to kill him because it was the right thing to do. And so what it takes is, if you are the leader and if you're giving somebody feedback from a place of anger or fear or sadness, you need to make sure you need to check yourself and coming from the right place. And then once you're coming from the right place, then you can give the feedback or the coaching.
I would usually give, especially beginning reps, feedback on pretty much every call.
Yeah.
Where that rep was in their life cycle, depending on how much feedback they would get and what type of feedback they would get. In general, I wanted to clear the 20% line, which is, if I'm coaching on something that isn't at least going to have a 20% change, then I should really question, is this just me being petty or coaching to preference versus literally, did they like not set an agenda at all?
Yeah.
That type of thing. And then as you get more and more mature and more skilled as a rep, now we're coaching to more stylistic stuff and trick shots and other things you could have done to, like we were talking about earlier, combine multiple stages into one call. But regardless, trying to keep it to 1 to 2 things on each call, so it's not a whole punch list on every call, is important. And you also need to read where that rep is, if they're sort of like overstuffed with feedback or not. But to Alex's point, what I want to call out is, a lot of times a rep's ability to calibrate where they stand is completely null. And what I mean by that is, one rep can get 10 pieces of positive feedback and 1 piece of negative feedback, and they can think that they're about to be on PIP. The next rep can get 10 pieces of negative feedback, 1 piece of positive feedback, and think, I'm going to President's Club this year. And so I think it's really important. In the beauty of sales is, other functions have to rely on an every 6 months performance review. We end months, we end quarters with quantitative results. And so I always recommend, find some rhythm that works for you and your team, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, where you pull up and you look at the trends. And that's where you can say like, hey, over the last months, you ask them to do a self-reflection. And that's your opportunity to come in and be like, hey, over the last 7 calls we were on, I've noticed that these types of things have happened over and over and over again. And I wanted to see if we could workshop together a way that we can really improve your discovery skills, because that seems like something that's coming up more often than not. You do it in the moment, but I think it's really important to have those pull-up moments to give them a big picture, like, where do you stand?
It's almost like, how do we get the boulders in place? Do you know how to frame a call? Are you doing the discovery well? Do you know how to give the demo well? Once we get those good, then let's start adding in the cool little, like you said, trick shots from there, the stylistic types of things. Let's get the foundational pieces down.
Yeah.
And until we get those down, I'm going to repeatedly drill you on those things. Because after every single call, and be like, so how was your frame, dog? And if it wasn't good, I'm going to continue to say, how was your frame? And once you prove that, then let's go to the 201, 301. So I love that perspective there.
Well, you had a really good framework that you shared in the prep around the basic flow and the buckets of a discovery call. Could you maybe start with new seller? How would you coach them on a discovery call versus, we'll go to middle and advanced?
I've at least always been able to learn best by buckets. if you tell me I need to go and conduct a 30-minute initial meeting and I'm a new rep, I'm like, there's a lot of different components of that. There's a script. Don't even get me started on the demo, right? All these different types of things. So how do you actually break it up where it's digestible? And at least in the initial meeting, I break it up into 5 different components of it. The upfront contract or the pre-frame, whatever you want to call it. It's the discovery. Then it's the speaking to the trends that are happening within the space today. So it's not yet pitching your product, but like creating the lens through it. And then it's the let's share about what our product does. And then it's the next steps. From there, it's really about like working your way through it. It's digestible for the rep. It's like, oh, there's only 5 key components that I really need to focus on. And then when it comes to doing like mock discovery calls or whatever, it's like, we're going to talk about how to be doing the frame over and over again. Yeah. Once you can do that, then we're going to get to this wonderful world called discovery. And, as we all know, there are so many different types of ways to be going about discovery, but it's like giving specific methodologies within that.
I think a lot of reps, when they're being taught how to run an initial meeting, they miss the forest through the trees, where I remember when I first started running discovery calls, I was literally writing out word for word what I was going to say for a script for the whole call. And I'd get on with the customer and I'd have literally 2 pages of notes and I would end up losing myself and I couldn't run the call effectively. You gave that framework. Could you make it a little more real for me and give an example of like how you would run that 5-step process with something you've sold in the past?
It's like a pre-frame always comes with saying, I appreciate the time. I want to check to make sure we have 30 minutes. Always just like the upfront contract. From there, I break down the pre-frame into 4 main components. It's how do you build credibility? How do you talk about what the agenda of the call is? How do you then talk about what the goal is going to be? And then asking for permission. So for example, if I was at outreach, I'd say, hey, appreciate the time. I want to check. We have 30 minutes. Awesome. A little back in me, I speak with CROs and sales leaders literally every single day. And we're talking about how are we building pipeline? How are we looking at data? Or how are we getting the reps actually rowing in the same direction? So today, what I'd love to do on this conversation is I'd love to actually talk to you about, are those problems actually relevant for you? If not, what is actually relevant for you? From there, I'm happy to give you a little bit of reflection. If it makes sense, share how outreach goes about solving some of those issues. If there's alignment from there, the next step would either be to get other people from your team involved or even show you what the platform looks like. I'm curious, what else would you like to cover on today's conversation? So I'm actually just like teeing up, and you notice like I'm really breaking it down very easily. And that obviously, I've taught that to now at this point, probably over 1,000 reps who just like nail these key steps along the way. Discovery is one of my favorites because there's so many different types of ways to do it. And it's also about each rep has different ways that they talk and communicate. And so I always like to give like legitimate tactics on here's one type of discovery, here's another type of methodology. My 3 to 4 favorite is first off, coming in with a hypothesis. Do you actually have a perspective on their business that you can say, hey, here's what I read about your company. Here's what I'm assuming your problems are. Is that right? And the beautiful part about that is if you're right, they're going to say yes. And if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. They're going to say, no, that's not right. Here is what my problems are. So at least they're giving you the answer at the end of the day. Another type of discovery I always love is just like lay of the land, right? This is the simple. How many people on your team? What type of tech are you using? Different stuff like that. Like it's almost like, hey, before I ask you maybe the heavy hitter questions, I need to say, what's your name? Do you live here? Like before I ask to meet your parents, for example, can I get to know like what's up with you? Once you get that, then you can go what I like to call the heaven and the hell. And this is the key here. It's like, how do you get somebody speaking to what is the heaven? What's your vision? What are you going for? How would it feel? What are the emotions that would happen? What would that enable within your life? And then from there, flip it. What's holding you back? What would actually prevent you from getting there? How long has that been occurring? What have you done to try to solve for it? What happens if you don't solve for it? What you're trying to do here is you say, here's the heaven, here's the hell, and this beautiful area here, that's the gap. If you can make them feel the freaking pain of that gap, that's going to get them into a state of commitment to say, oh shit, now that we're talking about this, I'm realizing that there's a serious issue here that I need to figure out how to solve, whether it be with their solution or something else. You're getting them into a state of commitment to continue that conversation.
We'll pause on the discovery piece there, but I just want to underscore something that you said earlier, which is like at the beginning, big boulders, and you have these 4 or 5 buckets that you're coaching to. And when I'm working with a junior seller, I'm like, did you even do the 4 buckets? For me, it was always, did you set a purpose, plan, outcome, agenda? Did you get to at least one business problem in your discovery? Did you get through next steps? How you did it might be really ugly in that first level of selling, but if you just did it, if you got the steps right, we're golden.
Yes.
The second level of seller, now we can start to think about style, right? Were you able to have like pretty finesse questions? Did it not come off as awkward? Did you kill the awkward silences in the call? Were you able to read the room and time your questions the right way? And so it's the style of how you're getting it. And then that top level of seller is really when you start to become an advisor, where it's like, okay, if they had the wrong diagnosis on the problem or on the solution, were you able to like sit there toe to toe with them and actually challenge them? But you're not going to be like pushing a level 1 seller on the tone of their question when they didn't even set an agenda in the first place.
The last thing I'll say is this. Yes, it's important to coach a sales professional powerfully. It's always important to teach people how to great frame, how to do discovery, demo, all this sort of stuff. Obviously, the outcome is you want them to crush their quota so you can build a team. But there's something more that I think people sometimes forget to like tap into. And it's almost like people have been driving a convertible and the top's been up the entire time. And it's like, let's take the top down and let's like open up to like, why are you teaching these people? Right now, especially if you get a junior seller, they probably got a job in sales because like, I don't know, I just need to learn how to like make money and do stuff. And what you're teaching them is invaluable skills about how to relate to people, how to truly be in a deep level of presence with somebody, how to be able to read, ooh, this person's guarded or this person's really open, how to lovingly challenge prospects. And you're helping them to do something so much more. You're teaching them how to maybe one day step into entrepreneurship because they know how to sell. You're teaching them how to communicate with somebody, and maybe that's going to help them find a partner. You're teaching them how to actually build confidence within themselves. And so often if a leader's like, I need to coach you so that you can hit quota, it's like, yeah. And it's so much more than that. You're truly teaching somebody something that is going to open up so much possibility. And I think we all have a leader who we can think of, who we've been coached by, like, man, that person made me a great sales professional, but did a hell of a lot more than just make me a better sales professional.
I know so many managers who don't know anything about their reps' personal goals, their financial goals, why they're in sales in the first place. Do you have a frame or a process to figure this stuff out about your reps so that you can really understand what their goals are?
We do the 4-quadrant exercise. You talk about what are your goals from a work/career perspective, from a health perspective, from a relationships perspective, as well as from a time, money/freedom perspective. As opposed to doing an account plan QBR, I'd actually ask them to create that and share it with the entire team. And then maybe that was the frame that then talk about your account plan. But it just made this whole different thing of like, oh man, like I know what my team wants. And if I'm an account executive and I see other account executives like, this is my crew here. Those small things where it's like, yes, I want to blow out our numbers. And I want to do that because, man, look how awesome we are together.
Amazing. Alex, we talked about a lot of great habits when it comes to coaching top performers, teams, really just getting to know the people behind the reps. It's time to talk about one thing that every leader should stop doing. So what is one bad habit that every leader should break so that all teams get a little bit better?
Stop acting like you know everything. If you have a pipeline problem, you don't have the answers to it because you're probably not the one who's making the cold calls or shooting out the emails or talking to your prospects every freaking day. Your job is to say, hey guys, here's the problem that we have at hand. And there's a lot of collective wisdom amongst this team. And I love for us to see if we can access some of it. Intelligence lies typically with the few where now it's moving to there's a collective intelligence. And how do we actually gain access to it? The way that we gain access to it is by the leader saying, I don't have the answers, but I have the questions. And how do we actually start approaching it that?
Amazing mic drop. Everyone hang on for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Alrighty, Nick, it's time for a 2x2 recap from this first leadership episode with Alex Kremer. What do you have for your 2?
So the first one is when you start working with somebody on your team for the first time, new rep or somebody that you inherit, the first thing that you need to orient around is like, what are they looking to accomplish? Are they motivated by money? Do they want to move up in their career? Do they want to figure out if sales is for them? Figure out what they are oriented around, and then ask and gain their permission to push them. Because now you know where they're looking to go, and you have permission to help them get there, which might require hard feedback. That lays the foundation for all future conversations with that salesperson. Number two is a big mistake that folks make, frankly, in any personal situation, but especially in sales leadership, is when they have a situation with somebody on their team that they want to change, they immediately jump to trying to change that situation. And what Alex shared with us is before trying to change a situation, you first need to break the fourth wall and call out that situation that is going on, call out the dynamic, and get on the same page there. And then you can actually start trying to change it with both parties as opposed to you doing something and they're like, where the hell is this coming from?
Number 3, your top performers are oftentimes motivated by carrots. So the way you might coach them differently is you might say like, hey, your discovery call is at an 8. You think I could give you a couple things that'll take it to a 10? Another thing that you can do is put your top performers into the limelight. Make them be the ones who are running the trainings on your behalf. And not only will that get them to master the concepts better, but then 2, all the other performers on their team are going to be like, oh shoot, that rep is doing it, so I should probably do it too. And then lastly, number 4, try to coach your reps in buckets. It is really hard to learn how to do a discovery call if all of your feedback feels very random. But if you break the call into the buckets of the call, you can start by just saying, okay, did you even get each bucket right? And then you can start to give them more and more stylistic tweaks within each bucket once they at least get the basic steps correct. Alrighty, Nick, how can people help us out?
So we've done very, very few episodes around truly changing the culture of your team in a really, really tactical way. If you liked this episode, we did an interview with Stephanie Jenkins, who is the VP of Global Sales at a company called PandaDoc. That was a similar episode to this one around how you can effectively, tactically change the way that you interact with your team and change the team culture so that you build a really, really strong selling culture. So if you like this episode, there's a link to the one with Stephanie in the show notes. Give it a listen, and we'll see you next week on the show.